Hello YouTube, it's Alan. I have always wanted to make a video about how I knew I was trans. I've always wanted to do that since I decided to transition about 2.5 years ago. I've been on T for 2 years, or slightly over 2 years. Um, but I never have made a video that is actually with that title. Um, it's such a huge thing for me to cover. Um, And I've tried to do that a bit in other videos, like in my recent video, The Shadow, something or other, and a video that I did a little over 2 years ago, I think, how I did not know that I was trans, in which I was explaining why I didn't realize it sooner, and that's actually my most popular video, which is interesting. Um, so anyway, I've also talked in a bunch of other videos, little bits and pieces of why I transitioned, I guess, and because that's pretty much what my whole channel is about. I made videos from even several years before I decided to transition, where I shared my thoughts about why I wasn't sure if I wanted to transition. So there's that. Um, so in this video, I want to focus on what led me to decide to transition at the time that I did. Um, so, all right. So, as I've said before, it took me a long time to decide to transition. I mean, I was kind of learning about transition and watching videos and stuff for years, like maybe 8 years or something before I decided to transition. So I did a lot of deliberation for a really long time, maybe more than a lot of people do. And so, why did it take me so long? Well, I, to put it in as a short story, probably um, I was really in my head about it. Like I was thinking intellectually and thinking practically about it and second guessing myself, doubting myself, um, maybe more than some people do. And I was afraid. I mean, I was really afraid of what it might be like to come out to people like friends and family and coworkers and to go through that huge change of like changing my name and having people get to know me in a different way. Because coming out is really scary. It is. So I tried to make do for as long as I could without transitioning. Because I thought, well, I mean, I'm okay not transitioning. Like I wasn't necessarily suicidal or anything most of the time. So I thought I would try to stick it out because it sounded to me like a lot of people transitioned because they were suicidal. So I thought, well, if I don't feel that way, maybe that means that I'm not really trans or I don't totally need to transition or something like that. And I've touched on this in other videos, and basically, what I've come to think about that is that you don't need to be suicidal to transition. You don't need to be at like the most rock bottom place imaginable. Like, you don't need to have an awful, awful life to take steps to make your life better. You can be like kind of okay and still decide to take huge steps to make your life better and to fulfill your real potential. Um, so I ended up basically just realizing that and believing it. Um, and, well, I mean, now in hindsight, now knowing what it feels like to live as my real self and knowing what it feels like to have like some level of happiness with my body and how other people see me. Now having that to compare to, I realize that maybe my life or my day-to-day feelings before transition were not really as okay as I thought they were. So there's that. Um, so yeah, I was scared, and a lot of that was uncertainty, because clearly pre-transition, before I went on T, I had no real idea of what it would be like to be on T, and I had no real factual basis for knowing how I would feel once I was on T. Like, I didn't know if going on T was for sure the right choice or not because I hadn't experienced it. So, how could I predict it with total certainty? I couldn't. So, I think that held me back for a really long time because I tend to be a kind of tentative person. I tend to be a very cautious person in any situation, whether it's making big life decisions or riding my bike or anything like that. I tend to be cautious, which I think has its benefits, but then it can also make decisions hard and it can be kind of paralyzing sometimes. So I just couldn't tell for certain whether transition would make me feel much better or not because I had not experienced it. So, when you're in that situation mentally, how do you move forward? Because I don't think any of us can know with certainty, like for a fact, whether transition would be 100% the right choice or not. Because if you have not actually experienced something, how can you tell what it's going to be like? So that hung me up. Now, as I may have mentioned before, when I was seeing a therapist in the months before transition and after transition, she did actually help me think this through. Um, like, when I was telling her about this uncertainty, she said, well, like, um, yeah, you can't know with certainty. You can't. But you have to unparalyze yourself and move forward in your life somehow or other. So, if you can't know with certainty how it's going to be, is there something else that you can base decisions off of? Which is the thought that I came up with, which is that it was probable that I would feel better more of the time transitioning as opposed to not transitioning. Um, like before transition, often I would feel like uncomfortable with my body, basically. Like when I would see pictures that were taken of me, I would often be kind of disappointed. Like I would look at the picture and I'd go like, oh, well, I felt like I looked a little bit more masculine than that when the picture was taken, but apparently not, and that kind of sucked. Or like I would look at myself in the mirror and I would think, oh, I didn't think I quite looked like that today with these clothes, but apparently I do, so that's a bummer. Uh, so I had that a lot. And when I say it that way about the pictures and stuff, that might sound kind of superficial or, well, yeah, superficial. I mean, it wasn't just about appearance or looking good, it was about like a mismatch between how I felt and how I appeared in terms of gender. A mismatch. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about looking like good or not. So I had that really every day. that kind of disappointing mismatch. Um, yeah. So after spending those like 8 years or whatever, looking at trans guys online, watching their transitions, feeling envious about that, when I was talking with my therapist on this occasion, I thought, well, based on all that evidence, it does seem like even if being on T was not a 100% fix all of the time, and even if there were things about it that I didn't like a ton, um, like even if I wasn't super thrilled about becoming furry, which I'm not really furry yet, by the way, even though it's been 2 years, but anyway, even if there are things that I'm not that thrilled about, I would probably be likely to feel a bit better on T on a day to day basis than not on T. Um, so that was a really big thing for me to realize that I did not have to have 100% certainty, nor did I have to think that I would be 100% happy with everything about being on T and transitioning. Because realistically, we're probably not going to be 100% thrilled about everything. Because think about cisgender people who are happy with their gender. Do they like everything about their body? Most of the time, not. Um, do they have a life that is awesome all the time and goes really smoothly? No. Um, so it's not helpful to think about whether transitioning would make you feel 100% happy with your body and if it would make your life totally better. Because nobody in any situation with any identity can achieve those things, I don't think. So that's not a very helpful way of thinking about it, in my opinion. So deciding to transition was not about suddenly arriving at this moment of certainty. Rather, it was about being okay with or just realizing that I would have to still have some uncertainty. That's how life is. But that I could still make a decision and not just remain paralyzed um, by just weighing the positives and negatives and realizing that if I felt kind of disappointed or uncomfortable at least a little bit every day about my body pre T, then it would make sense that being on T would make me feel a bit better. So, really, that is what led me to try it. I say try, try it, but it's not like I was like, oh, I'll try it for a couple weeks. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Well, no, obviously I stuck with it because it was the right choice for me, and I think I realized that in the thought process that I have just now been telling you about. Um, and so when I went on T, I was not totally certain that it would be the absolute right thing, which was scary because going on T does create some permanent changes, like the voice drop. If your voice drops, that is not going to go away when you get off of T. And, like the growth of the down there region, um, that's not going to go away if you go off T. So, yeah, it was scary for me going into that. Um, but, my process of learning about transition and doing a lot of introspection before transition made me feel sure enough that it was the right thing for me. So it worked out fine in that way. Um, and, as I've been on T longer, I continue to have more realizations that it was actually the right thing or that it is actually the right thing. Um, And I don't know if this would be sort of a topic for a whole different video, but maybe I can try to begin to talk about it here. I have felt more male, like increasingly male, and also increasingly in tune with myself since being on T. I was not somebody who really was like, before going on T, like, oh, I am totally male. I feel male on the inside, 100%. I am a man. I was not really like that pre-T. Um, and in my personal experience, I think that might not have made sense to be like that because it's like my body appeared female and I had female hormones running through me, and I was socialized to live in the world as female. So I don't know that I really grasped what being male meant or felt like. I don't think I grasped what it totally felt like. I mean, obviously, I felt male in some way because that's what led me to transition. But being on T and feeling that shape my body and my mind and feeling more of a match between my brain and my hormones in my body now being on T, that has led me to have much more of an understanding of what it means to feel male and to be male. So now I'm like, oh, that's what it feels like. Oh, I that feels like a match for me. That feels really fitting. I like it. It feels really meaningful for me. So, being on T was a discovery process, a learning process. Being on T in itself led me to have more realizations about myself. So it's been a process. It's not like I decided with certainty that I would transition and I knew that it was the perfect thing for me because I was a man, blah, blah, blah. It was really just a process of a decision, another decision, another decision, another decision, more knowledge about myself, another decision, more knowledge about myself. Um, and so, what am I trying to say here? I guess that it's like as time goes on and as I'm on T for a longer time, I continue to have more realizations that I'm trans or male. There's not like one moment that I can point to where I was like, that was how I knew I was trans. That's how I knew I was male. No, and I think that's why I haven't made a video with that title. It's it's ongoing. It gets deeper and stronger as time goes on. Um, I guess that's kind of the best way I can put it right now. Um, and then just maybe a last thing that I can say here, because this is really long, as always. Um, Deciding to transition involved trusting myself instead of always second guessing myself, which I did a lot. You paralyze yourself if you second guess yourself all the time and have thoughts like, oh, am what if I want to transition just because of the patriarchy? What if I want to transition just because of cultural influences? Or like second guessing yourself like that. Like questioning whether your feelings are real or not. I mean, to some level, that might be worth doing and it might be fascinating, but it can also be paralyzing. So at some point, you've got to just trust yourself and think, no, I'm not a robot that has been programmed by society. I do actually have my own brain and my own feelings, which are true and valid, and I've got to just go along with my feelings and trust that. And I did that, and it's like blown my mind what power that's given me and how it's changed my life for the better. So, if you have questions about anything relating to what I've touched on, please let me know. I'm happy to try to answer questions, maybe make another video along these lines. So, anyway, thank you for watching. Bye.